For the longest time, when you talked about infrastructure as code, you were talking about one thing: Terraform. It was the king, totally stable, totally predictable, and then suddenly it wasn't. Literally overnight, a license change shocked the entire community, and just like that, a challenger was born: OpenTofu. So today, we're going to dig into this huge fork in the road. What does it actually mean for the tools you use every single day? And more importantly, how do you decide which path to take? All right, so here's the game plan. We'll kick things off with the license change that started this whole thing. Then we'll look at the rise of OpenTofu and put it head-to-head with Terraform. After that, we'll get our hands dirty and see how to actually use OpenTofu, and then we'll wrap up by tackling that big question: should you switch? Okay, let's rewind and start right at the beginning. Everything was fine and dandy in the world of Terraform, and then, bam! HashiCorp, the company behind it, made a move that sent shockwaves through the entire DevOps community. And that really gets to the core of it, right? I mean, Terraform was the standard. It was the tool everyone used. So why on earth would we suddenly need a fork? Why would anyone go through the trouble of creating a whole new project? Well, it all comes down to one little word: licensing. So what happened is HashiCorp switched Terraform's license. It used to be under the good old open source MPL 2.0, but they moved it to something called the Business Source License, or BSL. Now that might sound like some boring legal stuff, but trust me, the impact is absolutely massive. Basically, with this BSL, Terraform isn't really open source anymore, not in the way we usually think about it. It's now what you'd call source available. The code is still out there for you to see, but, and this is a big but, it comes with some pretty serious strings attached about how you can use it for commercial purposes. Okay, so the big question for probably everyone watching is, does this actually affect me? And the short answer is probably not. If you're an engineer just using Terraform to manage your company's own internal stuff, your dev, staging, prod environments, you're totally fine. Nothing changes for you. This BSL thing is really aimed at a very specific group: companies that were building their own commercial products on top of Terraform. Think of tools like TerraGrunt or platforms like Envio. Here's a great way to think about it. Kubernetes is truly open source, right? That's why a company like AWS can take it and offer a managed service like EKS. Well, the BSL is specifically designed to stop that exact thing from happening with Terraform. It's a business move, plain and simple. It protects HashiCorp by basically telling competitors, hey, you can't build your own Terraform as a service and compete with us. So you have these new rules in place, and you might think that's the end of the story. But no, the community didn't just roll over and accept it. They organized, they fought back, and their response got a name: OpenTofu. And man, this all happened so fast. They forked the project from Terraform version 1.5. And that's key because that was the very last version that was still under that pure open source MPL license. Think about this. Literally 1 month after HashiCorp dropped the news, the community had already rallied together and created OpenTofu, basically picking up the open source torch right where Terraform left it. So you see, OpenTofu isn't just some copy-paste job. It's more like a promise. It's a project that's driven by the community for the community. The whole point, the entire reason it exists, is to make sure there's always a truly open source version of this tool that's governed by the people who actually use it. All right, so now we've got two major players on the field. You've got the original Terraform with its new license, and you've got this new community-driven fork, OpenTofu. So let's really break it down and put them side by side. And this table, really, it shows you everything you need to know. It's a fundamental split in philosophy. Over here, you have Terraform. It's source available, and its roadmap is decided by one company, HashiCorp. And over on this side, you've got OpenTofu. It's truly open source, and its future is in the hands of the community, the users and contributors. It's that classic matchup: corporate control versus community power. And, this community-driven approach gives OpenTofu some really clear advantages. For one, it's got serious backing from companies who need it to succeed. Plus, it's totally open for anyone to contribute to. And maybe the best part, it can actually move fast on features that the community has been begging for years. And if you want a perfect example of this in action, look no further than the story of one particular feature: state encryption. Okay, so for years, people in the Terraform community were asking for a way to encrypt the state file. It makes sense, right? You've got sensitive stuff in there. It was one of the most upvoted feature requests on GitHub. But for whatever reason, it just never became a priority for HashiCorp. But then OpenTofu comes along, and guess what? The community makes it a top priority, and they get it done. Boom. That right there is the power of community governance in a nutshell. Okay. This all sounds great in theory, right? But what about in the real world? What's it actually like to use OpenTofu? Is it going to be a huge pain to switch? Let's get practical. And this is probably the most important thing you need to hear if you're even thinking about switching. The folks behind OpenTofu were smart. They knew nobody would switch if it was hard, so they made it a dead simple drop-in replacement. So what does drop-in replacement actually mean? It means you install it with something easy, like brew install OpenTofu. And then you just change the command you type. Seriously, instead of Terraform init, you type tofu init. Tofu plan, tofu apply. The command line interface is the same. The workflow you've been using for years, it's exactly the same. And it gets even better. It's not just the commands. All your existing HCL code, all those .tf files you've painstakingly written, they work with OpenTofu right out of the box. No changes needed. That's huge. We're talking 0 code changes to get started. For any dev team, that's a massive, massive win. Okay, so we've walked through the whole backstory, we've compared the tech, and we've seen how easy it is to use, which brings us to the million-dollar question. So let's just get right to it. The question everyone's thinking about: should you switch from Terraform to OpenTofu? What's the right call for you and your team? Do you stick with what you know, or do you make the jump? Well, for one group of people, the answer is actually crystal clear. If your company is one of those that the BSL is targeting, if you're selling a commercial product that's built on Terraform, then honestly, the choice is made for you. You pretty much have to switch to OpenTofu. It's about staying compliant and making sure your business has a future. But what about everyone else? For the vast majority of us who are just using Terraform for our own company's infrastructure, the decision isn't nearly as black and white. You're not breaking any rules by sticking with Terraform, so you have the luxury of taking a wait-and-see approach. Let's be real, OpenTofu is still the new kid on the block. It's probably smart to just watch and see how it grows up. So if you're in that wait-and-see camp, what should you actually be looking for? Well, you want to keep an eye on how the project evolves. Is it getting a steady stream of long-term contributors, or is it just a flash in the pan? Is it still pumping out cool, valuable new features, like that state encryption we talked about? The answers to those questions will really tell you if OpenTofu has legs for the long run. And that kind of leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. This whole Terraform versus OpenTofu thing, it's about way more than just a license. It's a massive test case for the future of our industry. It really forces us to ask a fundamental question about the critical tools we all depend on. Is the future going to be driven by single corporations, or is it going to be truly guided by the open source community? And honestly, only time is going to tell.